And I have the referee's permission. Your first diver is Holly Brisanto, City of Sheffield. Inward 1.5 somersaults, height. Holly scored 7, 7, 6.5, 7, 7, 7, 7. Tilly Brown, City of Sheffield, inward 1.5 somersaults, height. Six and a half, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6. Clara Kerr, Edinburgh diving, inward 1.5 somersaults, height. Seven, 7, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 6, 6. Fifth Bent Ashmill, Dive and Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults, height. Six and a half, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6, 5.5, 6. Amy Rollinson, Dive London Aquatics, back 1.5 somersaults, height. Four and a half, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5, 5.5. Evie Smith, Dive London Aquatics, back 1.5 somersaults, height. Six, 6, 5, 6, 6, 6, 6. Lily Chandler, Southend Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position free. Five and a half, 5.5, 6, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. Amy Wright, City of Leeds, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position free. 5 and a half, 6 and a half, 5 and a half, 6, 6, 5 and a half, 6. Yasmin Harper, City of Sheffield, inward 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Six and a half, 6, 7, 7 and a half, 7, 6 and a half, 6 and a half. Grace Reed, Dive London Aquatics, back 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Five and a half, 7, 7, 6 and a half, 6 and a half, 6 and a half, 6 and a half. Maya Kuti, City of Leeds, inward 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Five and a half, 6, 6, 6, 5, 6, 6. Libby Duke, Edinburgh Diving, inward 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Four and a half, 6 and a half, 6, 6 and a half, 6, 6, 6 and a half. Katie Burton, City of Leeds, back 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Five and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5, 5. Round 2, Holly, forward 2 and a half, somersaults, pint. Six and a half, 6 and a half, 6, 7, 6 and a half, 6, 6. Tilly, forward 2 and a half, somersaults, pint. Five and a half, 5 and a half, 5, 6, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5. Clara, back 1 and a half, somersaults, pint. Four and a half, 5, 5, 4 and a half, 5, 4 and a half, 4 and a half. Deshan, forward 2 and a half, somersaults, pint. 7, 7, 7, 7.5, 7, 7, 6.5. Amy, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists, position 3. Six, 5.5, 6, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5. Evie, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pint. Five and a half, 6, 5.5, 6, 6, 6, 6. Lily, forward 2.5 somersaults with tug. Three and a half, 3, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Amy, back 1.5 somersaults, pint. 4, 4, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4. Yasmin, back 1.5 somersaults, pint. 7, 7.5, 6.5, 7.5, 7, 7.5, 7. Grace, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pint. 6.5, 7, 7.5, 7, 7, 7, 7. Maya, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position 3. 6, 6, 6.5, 6, 6, 6, 6. Libby, reverse 1.5 somersaults with tug. 4.5, 5.5, 5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. Katie, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position 3. 6, 5.5, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 5. Round 3, Holly, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists, position 3. Six, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6, 6.5. Tilly, forward 1.5 somersaults, 2 twists, position 3. Six and a half, 7, 7, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Clara, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pint. Four and a half, 5.5, 5, 4, 4, 5, 4. Duchamp, back 1.5 somersaults, pint. Four and a half, 5, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 5. Amy, forward 2.5 somersaults, pint. Seven, 7, 7, 7.5, 7, 6.5, 6.5. Evie, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, position 3. Five and a half, 5, 4.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5. Lily, back 1.5 somersaults, pint. Four and a half, 4, 4.5, 4, 5, 4.5, 4.5. Amy, inward 1.5 somersaults, pint. Five, 4.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5, 4.5, 5. Yasmin, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pint. 7.5, 8, 6.5, 7.5, 7.5, 8, 7.5. Great. Seven, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 7, 7, 6.5. Higher, back 1.5 somersaults, pite. Five and a half, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 5, 5. Libby, forward 2.5 somersaults, pite. Three and a half, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. Katie, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pite. Six and a half, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6, 6. Round 4, Holly, back 1.5 somersaults, pite. Five and a half, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5.5. Tilly, back 1.5 somersaults, pite. Six, 5.5, 4.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. Clara, forward 2.5 somersaults, pite. Five and a half, 5, 6, 6, 5, 5, 5. Deshan, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pite. Three, 3.5, 4, 3, 3.5, 3.5, 3. Amy, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pite. 5.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6, 6.5, 6.5. Evie forward, 2.5 somersaults, pike. Six, 6.5, 5.5, 6, 6, 6, 6. Lily, reverse 1.5 somersaults with tug. 4, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Amy, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pike. 5.5, 6, 5, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Yasmin, reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, position free. 7, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 6.5, 7. Grace, inward 1.5 somersaults, pike. 7, 7, 6.5, 7.5, 7, 7, 7. Maya, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pike. 5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 5, 5, 5.5. Libby, back 1.5 somersaults, pike. 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 5, 4.5, 5. Casey, forward 2.5 somersaults, pike. 5, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 5, 5. Tilly Brown, City of Sheffield, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pike. Can I re-announce? I do apologise. Holly Prasanto, City of Sheffield, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pike. 6, 7.5, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 7. Tilly Brown, City of Sheffield, reverse 1.5 somersaults, Pite. 6.5, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5. Clara Kerr, Edinburgh diving, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, position free. Five and a half, 4.5, 5, 5, 5.5, 5, 5.5. The Sharmbent Ashfield Dive London Aquatics, reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, position free. Eight, 7.5, 7, 7, 7.5, 6.5, 7. Amy Rawlinson, Dive London Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults, Pite. 7, 7, 7, 8, 8, 7, 7. Evie Smith, Dive London Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults, Pite. 6.5, 7, 7, 7, 6, 6.5, 6.5. Lily Chandler, Southend Diving, inward 1.5 somersaults, Pite. 4.5, 4.5, 5.5, 5, 4.5, 5, 5. Amy Wright, City of Leeds, forward 2.5 somersaults, Pite. 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 5, 4.5, 5. Yasmin Harper, City of Sheffield, forward 2.5 somersaults, Pite. 6 7, 6.5, 6, 7.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Grace Reed, Dive London Aquatics, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked. Six and a half, 7.5, 7, 7, 7, 6.5. Maya Cutty, City of Leeds, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked. Five, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5, 5.5. Libby Duke, Edinburgh Diving, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, position free. Four and a half, 4, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4, 4. Katie Burton, City of Leeds, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked. Six and a half, 5.5, 6, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Thank you, divers. Thank you, judges and recorders. We will have those results in a short while. In the meantime, you have 30 minutes for any changes. There's no need to sign your dive sheet if you don't have a change for the